Hey, folks, welcome to the show. It is 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, and it is 10 p.m. Eastern, and it's 7 p.m. Left Coast Time. I want to welcome you to the show, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving me your time to be here. This is, of course, Scotty Roberts and the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network, but not really. We're not on Odyssey tonight because we're just on the YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Not so much for those of you who are here because you already are here, but for those who would see this in the future and want to find the channel. So I want to welcome you all here. Thanks for being here. And it was a cold day again here in Louisiana at 32 degrees, 33 degrees, somewhere around there. But tomorrow, get this, those of you up north, Leslie Holker, you're in the chat room. Those of you up north will understand the meaning of this. Tomorrow, the forecast is 46 degrees and sunny. What's that tell you? And we're working our way to close to 60 on Sunday and then into the 70s late next week. So it's going to start warming up to normal Louisiana weather, so I hear. So that's good. How's the weather in your neck of the woods? Yeah, that's shorts weather, Leslie. That's shorts and flip-flops because there's no snow and ice left up north when we do that. And I don't think there will be here either. So it has been an eventful day and an eventful week down here in Louisiana. I would say that the weather has, prevented us a little bit from moving forward on some things, but it's temporal. It's changed. It's gone. We're moving into new weather. So that makes me feel very happy. Despite the fact that we're going to have a freeze warning until 9 a.m. tomorrow. So there's my weather. How's your weather? Cold in Oregon, says Sarah Nichols. I got above 0 yesterday and today, said Leslie. Yeah, that should start breaking pretty soon toward the end of February, you'd think, up there in Minnesota. And let's see, who all's in here? Steve Clark, good to see you. Sarah, good to see you. Leslie, of course, good to see you. And we got Field Guy, and a couple of other people have been in here, I thought, in and out. And so we'll either see them later or we won't. So I want to welcome those of you who are sitting in the chat room right now. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that we did last night, talking about the Dark Triad. Only tonight, we take a little different angle on the Dark Triad. Did you know that there is another approach to looking at the Dark Triad personality traits? And so we're going to look at sex and antiheroes as it relates to Dark Triad personality types. And so I think mine yesterday, what did I say? I'm 13.83% darker than the common numeral going across the board. So how are you? Did any of you take the test last night or today? Hey, Delaney, good to see you. Elderberry, good to see you as well. And glad to have you all in here. And so if you took the test, I had a couple of people that were sending me their tests and their test results that were able to do that. Oh, let's see. Oh, Pete, is this yours? Here's Pete Arnold's. Look at that. I want you to see, first of all, how black and dark his measures are here. Pete, you are 42.83% darker than the average person.
Yeah. I claim to be perfect.
Do you have a red lightsaber over there?
I do.
The Sith. So Pete, being the Sith in the crowd, he's the highest I've seen so far. And so that just makes me a really nice guy with some dark tendencies. It makes Pete a dark guy with some kind of nice tendencies every now and then. And so we're going to talk about that. There are actually beneficial things about having that dark triad of personality traits. And as it relates to sexual things, as it relates to being anti-heroes. So we're going to look at that in a few minutes. Steve said, I started to take the test, but my tablet warned of possible viruses in that site. Oh, really? I didn't get any warnings on mine, so that's interesting. I wouldn't say just skip and avoid that, but if if you get a chance, you might be able to try it. So I wanted to talk just a little bit because I didn't yesterday so much about the death of Rush Limbaugh. Now, some of you may have liked him, some of you may have not liked him, and I think the people who didn't like them, and liked him, it was generally fell along a political divide. You liked Rush because you liked his politics. You liked what he had to say. There were a lot of people that used to say, the people who now say, "Oh, you just listen to Fox News. Do you ever listen to anything other than Fox News?" Well, I know where your opinions come from. It's Fox News. And I say, no, I don't really watch as much Fox News as I used to. I catch some snippets on YouTube every now and then. But before that, it was Rush Limbaugh. Oh, you obviously take all your opinions from Rush Limbaugh. And I'm seeing some pretty dark stuff being said by people regarding Rush Limbaugh and regarding his death. And I had it called up here, but I'm going to go back a little bit and see if I can get that called up again. I know where it is on here. I just don't have to sit here and type to find it. But I was running into some very nasty comments from people about Rush Limbaugh and the death. Can't wait till they bury that turd, and things of that nature. And it starts to get a little old because. And I made a comment to somebody. I said, I said, you're really showing the love and tolerance of the left. You leftists, by the way you react when somebody you don't like politically dies. Now, there were Rocky and I, when we were doing our show together, we talked about this topic when, who was the senator? Senator Cummins, who passed away a couple of years ago, I think, or a year and a half ago. And there were some people getting out and dancing a jig because he's very liberal or leftist, if you will, Democrat. And we said to people, hey, there's no reason to do that, no call to do that. You may have disagreed with the man's politics in life, but you don't act that way. And this is, I think, coming out of this whole thing that has to say, because you disagree with me politically and you do this thing politically, you're standing for the death of babies and the death of old people and, starving children. And you're against all of those people. And you're willing to put people in cages at the southern border, yada, yada, yada. You've heard the political lines. And so, how can we show any kind of respect for somebody who died, who stood for those values? And it's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Just because somebody holds a different political value than you do, different political ideology than we do, or other way around, should that mean that we offer them no respect? Just because we can't agree with their politics? Are they people who starve children or put children in cages? Was one of the latest ones down at the border because they didn't like those policies. And so all of that stuff is a bunch of B's and S's and S as far as I'm concerned. And it's a way to express hatred. It's the way hatred against conservatism is. You're having that little backlash right now after Trump not winning the election officially and Biden taking office. You're seeing all kinds of political backlash and cancel culture against people who would have a politically conservative point of view. And that's going to be natural in this kind of thing. And what the people on the left don't see and the Democrats don't see is they become part of that machine that does that. They are the ones that are creating division. They're not healing division, which is what Joe Biden supposedly called for during the campaign, called for after the election. And so all of this stuff, no more political parties, says Teresa Danton. This is just for the birds, elephants, donkeys, cantaloupes, lizards, I don't know what. And I agree with you. And Leslie said, I rarely scroll through Facebook anymore. The hatred sucks what life I have left in me out of me. And the only way I let that does that to me, Leslie, is when I let myself be drawn into an argument. And I can argue with the best of them, But I did want to show you the way this came up. So let me put in a little criteria here for my search, and let's see if I can find this post, because I want to read you some of these things so you get an idea of what people are saying if you haven't seen it already, and some of you have. And I only bring this up because I think it's important to confront it when you see it. And here's a liberal friend of mine who's, I don't know if he calls himself a liberal, but he's liberal by definition. He might call himself a progressive. He might call himself something completely different. But he put up a post this morning that said, regarding the recent death of a certain talk radio personality, do not speak his name, do not remember his words, let him and his words sink into the obscurity that they so richly deserve. Now, that was his initial post. Did you catch that? What do you think about that kind of a response to somebody who dies just because you don't like their political bent? I'm going to read it again. Regarding the recent death of a certain talk radio personality, do not speak his name, do not remember his words, let him and his words sink into the obscurity that they so richly deserve. And that people, of course, started making comments. Somebody was saying, oh, they were talking about all the negative things they think about Rush Limbaugh. I said, a more leftist tolerance and love I see here. Rest in peace, Rush. And I spoke his name. And this is where people came into me. Somebody put up a post that was a copy of somebody else's post that says, you want people to speak well of you after you're gone? Be a better person. You're mad the world is mocking Rush Limbaugh's death? That's on him and no one else. Simple as that. And simple as that, really, this person said. And somebody copied that and put that up as their response to what I said. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, oh, and then somebody else came in and said, where does it say leftists love anyone? Are you just bummed because people aren't fitting the stereotypes you want them to be? The man was a piece of trash and deserves no love. That's what another person said about Rush Limbaugh. I responded to some of these people. The first guy, I said, by whose standards of judgment are you talking? I asked him. And I said, I'm not mad at anyone. I said to the other guy, I said, everybody's mad because people are downing Rush Limbaugh. And I said, I'm only bummed by Rush's death. What stereotypes do you believe I'm wanting people to fit? And nobody ever answered that one, of course. Nobody got back after those. My friend who put up the original post said, I'm under no obligation to tolerate someone who mocked people who died of AIDS. I'm under no obligation to tolerate someone who mocked people with Parkinson's disease, which was Michael J. Fox. He said, Michael J. And I already dealt with some of those arguments with other people. I'm just not getting into it again. I don't have time to answer all the stupidity that's out there and that comes across my bow. And somebody said, it's a great irony that the guy who loved cigars and claimed smoking doesn't cause cancer died of lung cancer. I'm not one to celebrate someone's death, but good riddance. Now, by the way, Rush smoked cigars. He stopped smoking cigarettes a long time ago. He may have once said that he didn't believe cigarettes caused lung cancer, but I think in context, having listened to Rush for as long as I had, I believe Rush in context was saying it's not the only cause of lung cancer, but it is a big cause. And he realized it. What do you think he quit smoking for? So I don't think it's a great irony that somebody who smoked died of lung cancer. Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock in Star Trek, said he quit smoking 30 years before his death, but he still had COPD later in life. And so he still died of basically lung cancer. Was it good riddance to him because he was somebody who smoked and quit smoking and then died from it. So COPD, yep, field guy. And then I ended up saying to the guy whose post this was, we'll call him Jacques. I said, I'm not going to defend Limbaugh's brand of entertainment of the absurd, but I'm impressed by how we can always find a way and a good reason to show how much better we are than someone else, which is basically what was going on here. People say, I'm better than you. I'm better than you. And I went on and said, look, I get it. The man said some deplorable things about the gay community for 2 weeks back in 1990. He stopped when he realized it was hurting people. He learned from his mistake and he grew as a person. He once said that segment was the most regrettable part of his career. And I don't hold anyone liable for the mistakes that formed them into better people. And somebody else said, what the fuck do tolerance and love have anything to do with that asshole? And I responded, you've just answered your own question with your own words. So that's an asshole thing to say, in other words. Somebody else said, flush that turd down the toilet. Speaking of Rush. And I said, curious as to what, for you, made Rush Limbaugh a turd. And of course, he never answered me. But somebody else, as always happens in these online kinds of conversations, somebody says something and then you hold them accountable for their words. And two other people come in to defend what he had to say rather than him doing it. And then he'll just like their posts. Then somebody else brought up, which of these statements do you agree with then, Scotty? Show me where the tolerance and love is. And he lists all these different statements about Rush Limbaugh and all their dates and when they were made and what was said. And my response was, I started listening to Rush in 1988. That's not as much in recent years. The one thing I heard him say several times over the course of his 30 plus years was that he illustrates absurdity by being absurd. Now and I told this guy, now that's a neat list of quotes you picked up somewhere online. I could probably do the same from the other end of the spectrum. See, when somebody wants to debate me about something, especially when it gets into the political arena and something of this nature, don't show me your posts. Don't send me links. You tell me what you think. And that's what basically asked this guy. Hey, nice list there. It's obvious that you plucked that off of line somewhere. I could do the same. So, hey, Roger Rabbit. Hey, Barbie D. Good to see you both. Glad you're here and glad you're in here. Steve Clark says, I know of people who died of alcohol that didn't drink. They were hit and killed by a drunk driver. Well, there you go. Hey, Michelle Canham Free. Everyone deserves unconditional love and forgiveness, is the point. That's a very good point you've made, Michelle Canham Free. I happen to like Rush, but I started listening to Rush Limbaugh in 1988. That's the first time I ever heard him. And I'll take that back. It may have been 1989. He started his show in 88. This was way back for me. I was 27 years old when I first heard Rush Limbaugh. And I just passed him over on the radio and I thought, ooh, I like this guy. And so I started listening to him as a 27-year-old. I listened to him very faithfully for years. Then there were times I just got tired of the political fray and I didn't listen to him very much. Not because I disagreed with him, it's just because I'd go and clear my head of it all sometime. And in recent days, I only just in the last year started picking up and trying to hear him more. I just didn't have time to sit and listen to a radio show every day. And if I had time and remembered, I would let it play while I was working in my studio or something like that. And so Rush, to me, I actually saw Rush way back in the early days. I was in Detroit, and he came to the Fox Theater in Detroit and did his Rush to Excellence tour, where he went out speaking. And it was in promotion of his radio show and what he was doing. And I remember seeing him in the theater live. And that was back in probably 1989. or 1990, somewhere in that range of time. And yep, Leslie started in August of 1988. There it is. And Teresa D'Antone just pulled over to get coffee. How's your coffee? I could use coffee right now. I should have made one and I didn't. And if my son Sam was in here, he probably would go get me one. But he's out playing a game. So you've had some weird sleep patterns lately, Teresa. I am sorry to hear that. You're surviving the snow and ice, though. And my son, I'm going to admit something on air. My son gave me a little medicinal smoke last night, and that's because of my lower back and the damage I did to it last week. And you know what? I didn't wake up until 4:43 in the morning, not once, and that's pretty good, I think. So I had uh, a nice good night of sleep, and so there you go. The love for Rush caused a rift between my grandmother and my uncle. She basically shunned him for the better part of a decade because of it, said Roger Rabbit. Why would somebody in a family do that because you like listening to a particular radio show host? I've never quite understood that. And it's because he was more than a radio host, obviously. He represented political ideology. And that's why people are so hating on him now. And because he's dead, they're dancing their little jigs. So I said, this guy that listed all these quotes of Rush that were the nasty quotes from Rush Limbaugh. And I basically said, it's a neat little list. I said, I could provide you a list of the opposite side of the spectrum. So his response was, so you agree with all of it? Gotcha. And I said to this guy, I said, if that's how you make your evaluations and draw your superficial conclusions, kudos to you. I can see why you dislike Rush so much. Somebody else said, Rush Limbaugh has polluted the hearts and minds of many Americans and eroded much of what was common decency and respect in general discourse in American society. And somebody else said, I find no joy in the death of another, and I would wager living as long as he did, he has left ones behind who are pained by his passing. I cannot disregard that his departure removes a large purveyor of anger. I'm not ashamed that I find that pleasing. You know what? I didn't find Rush a purveyor of anger. As Rush used to say, you got to listen to this show for 6 weeks to get it, and that's really true. Got to listen to what he had to say, and listen to the way he approached things. And somebody else here said, I confess to an evil, satisfied chuckle at the passing of another human being. And that was the last post on there. I confess to an evil, satisfied chuckle at the passing of another human being. And the guy who wrote the original post liked his post. So that gives you an idea of how the left responded to the death of a conservative talk show host. Rush Limbaugh himself, for many years, said, I'm not a politician. He says, I'm an entertainer. And that's why he did the things he did. That's why he illustrated the absurd with the absurd. And so, hey, Audrey, good to see you. Nice to see you. I can't miss your capital letters. Hey, she's got to tell me, stop looking at my capital letters. My eyes are up here. Let's see. And I can't get through Scotty. You know me. I move on. I try John. What did I miss there? Oh, something might have gotten a little mixed up in there. So it's 30 here. It feels like 21, says Doug. Oh, let's see. Teresa says, nothing I can't get through, Scotty. You know that. Absolutely. I do know that. And you're a strong person. And I like that about you. And so, hey, Jeremy Hansen, good to see you, brother. Haven't seen you for a little while. Only in private, not on the show, I meant. So it's good to see you here. Nice to have you, brother. And so it's good to see everybody in here. Steffi is here. So Teresa says, and there she is, Steph. How you doing, Steph? Cuervo Queen. And so that's kind of my take on Rush Limbaugh. Even though it's not a great eulogy, it's not a really well thought out thing. I listened to Rush Limbaugh when I was in my youth, in my late 20s, and I listened to him all through my 30s and my 40s and most of my 50s. Does that tell you how long that he had some listening influence out there? He was a one of a kind. He is somebody that cannot be imitated. Somebody that I think that we'll never see another one quite like Rush Limbaugh. Mostly because he was the first to do what he did the way he did it. I saw something from uh, Daily Caller, which is Ben Shapiro, and he said the greatest testament to a man's life is the celebration of his death by the worst people on the internet. Isn't that the truth nowadays? I'm going to repeat that. I posted that on my wall in Facebook. I said the greatest testament to a man's life is the celebration of his death by the worst people on the internet. So Leslie says Rush paved the way for many conservatives, both on TV and the internet. Yeah, he did. You know, he was number one until Sean Hannity actually took over and bumped Rush down into number two. Sean was always very uncomfortable with that. Rush was just fine with that because he saw somebody moving on. And so Rush Limbaugh is hated not because he was a vile man, he's hated because he stated the truth. He stated facts as they were, sometimes used absurdity and silliness to illustrate his points. And it's like I say, people might disagree with me. And I'm not always right about everything I say. But you know what I do? I look for common sense in an argument and in an answer. I try to not insult people. I try to not go out of my way to speak ill of people. And I've made a good point of that. I've had people on the internet over the last few years that constantly argue with me, and they'll always come out with, "Well, you're always hurting people and always attacking people, always calling people names." So people who are very close to me have said that about me, and I said, "Really?" I said, "Could you cite me an example where I'm attacking or calling people names?" Now, I will admit, I have said at times, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez is an idiot. Okay. And I've tried to back that up with common sense and facts. I've had, but never when I'm arguing with somebody have I ever just tried to end an argument by saying, "You're such a bloviated idiot," or you're an asshole, or a fucktard, or a libtard, or something. I don't use those terms. You know why? Because they're incendiary. I don't want to. I would rather win the heart and mind of somebody. They don't have to agree with me, but they have to know at least that I come at them with common sense, as opposed to just the insults. Like I see these other people saying about Rush. That's because they got nothing else. They don't know how to communicate any differently than a barroom brawl. And so I stay away from that kind of talk. But I've had people accuse me of doing that, and I've said, "Cite chapter and verse, please. Please tell me one conversation you've seen. What was the topic where I was insulting people or calling them names or attacking them? I challenge you to do that." I said, "I give you open forum to do that. Come on over to my social media page. Come on, join me on the radio sometimes. Call me on the phone and tell me these things. Tell me what it is I have done that makes you think I do that." And you know what? Never happens. Barroom brawl, says Scott Allen. Iowa X says it'd be fun watching AOC age to 86 in Congress. Yeah, yeah, exactly. She's going to be the new Nancy Pelosi. So probably. So hey, Jeremy Hansen again, responding to your hi, brother. I think that was aimed at me. So that's what I think of Rush Limbaugh. I think he will be missed. It's funny when there are people who are personalities that you don't really know them, but you've heard them so much. When you hear somebody for over 25 years, close to 30 years for me, speaking every day, that person, and you see them in visuals, and you see. And he was awarded the what was it? The Presidential Medal of Honor, for Civilian Medal of Honor. I can't remember exactly what it's called. That might be it. Teresa, please do send me a text message. You can do that. Do you have my phone number? You can send it right to my phone. And anybody here, by the way, you can call me on my phone number. I'll just put it in here. People go, "Oh, how can you put your phone number up online?" My phone number has been public. Oh, did that even type? Was I even clicked in? No, of course not. Here it is again. I'll do it again. I'm wiggling my computer when I do that, so I'm trying to type light. I've got this computer on a wire stand to elevate it a little bit. There you go. You can text message me there. There it is, Doug. There's my phone number. Anybody who needs to call me, there it is. Don't call me now, though, because it'll ring to this phone. Oh, there's Rainy. So it'll ring to this phone, and I won't be able to pick it up because I'm doing you know what? I'm doing a radio show. There she is. There she is. She's adorning the main screen of my phone. So, yeah, send me a message there anytime. But that's the thing about somebody like a Rush Limbaugh or these personalities that we miss. It's like I remember when the skipper from Gilligan's Island died, Alan Hale Jr. He died back in I think it was 89 or 90. Because I was working in Detroit. I remember where I was sitting in my office when I heard that. I saw it in the newspaper actually. And I shed a little tear over that. I never knew the man. Why did I shed a little tear? It's because of what they meant to you as an entertainer when you saw every day as a kid. I watched Gilligan's Islands in repeats and reruns. Um, and so you see that. Yeah, my wife is a babe, Michelle. You're absolutely correct on that. And um, Steph wants to. I keep breaking into song. What the hell? What are you singing, Steph? It's written in the bathroom wall for a good time call. Oh, there you go. And so these people that when Leonard Nimoy died, same kind of thing. You felt an affinity with them, even though you never knew who they were, and they never knew who you were. And so that happens. And Delaney says she remembers that. That was a great show. That was. It was a show I was all through my youth. When Prince died, about 35 people reached out to me that day because that's what he meant to me. And it says Scott Allen. And so, yeah, there are people who die and you go, oh, man. And when I saw that Rush died, it didn't surprise me because we knew it was coming. He tried to prepare everybody who listened to him and liked him for his parting. You heard his show on, if you heard his show on New Year's, Christmas Eve day, you got an idea. I can't quote any of it, but when you see that and hear what the man's heart was all about, you can't possibly hate him for his politics if you disagree with his politics. But there are some people around here that are shallow enough that that's what they do, and that's all they're about. And that tells me, in my common sense, when I look at left and rightism, conservatism, liberalism, Republicans, Democrats. I just start looking at all that. You see the gap in that middle, and where are you? Are you in the gap, or are you on one side or the other? I'm not a Republican, but I am a conservative. But I look at all the tongue wagging and lip flapping of the left when it comes to tolerance and love and looking for equal ground and all of this. When you look for equal ground, that goes for people who you disagree with too. And what I saw with the way people have responded to the death of Rush Limbaugh doesn't make me mad. As one person said, "Oh, you're just mad." No, I'm not. I just think you're kind of dumb for being that way. You're inconsistent with your message, and so that's the way I see that. So and that's why I label the people on the left who are doing this the way I have. So that's not really a tribute to Rush Limbaugh. If I wanted to do a tribute, I'd pull clips of Rush Limbaugh. I would pull quotes. I'd be quoting him. I'd be talking to other people, and I'd give you a much better tribute. This is just a reaction to seeing the way that somebody is treated because their politics were different than theirs. And then noting the absolute inconsistency with message about the way they talk about this man who died. So there you go. Don't speak ill of the dead. Quid pro quo, says Carla Farrington. There it is. And so, when I brought up Elijah Cummings earlier, I only made mention of him very quickly. That's when Rocky and I on the radio show said we're not going to tolerate anybody talking ill of Elijah Cummings. The man died. He worked within his own wheelhouse, within his own political spectrum, within his own political ideology, and felt that he was living a good life and doing a good thing. It reminds me of that scene in Saving Private Ryan. The opening of the movie, the closing of the movie, the old man at the cemetery in Normandy. And he falls to his knees and cries and looks at his wife and says something to the effect of, he says, "Have I lived a good life? Have I been a good man?" And those, I think, are the things that we need to look at and say, I may not agree with your political ideology, and I might think your political ideology is even damning, but I need to stop and look. What was the quote from um, To Kill a Mockingbird, which is something that we have heard many times in many different forms. I don't know that she coined the word uh, when she wrote the book, but you don't know a man till you step into his shoes and walk around a mile in them, Atticus said. And so I got Pete is playing video games in the background, so you might hear him every now and then. He's on his big headset, playing war games with other people. So he's in the same room here. So if you hear talking, that's not me back there. But um, sometimes you have to step back and say, I need to walk in somebody else's shoes before I gauge them and judge them. And so, what did Doug Stack say here? We're never vile to the left when theirs die, but let Rush or someone die and they're happier than pigs and shit. That's pretty much true. They're dancing a jig. Teresa says, you guys, is it possible for the motors on my windshield wiper blade to freeze and lock up because they ain't working? Yeah, that's possible. Uh, sorry, I thought you were answering Doug there because it was right after his post. So, yes, Teresa, Saving Private Ryan, great flick. So, there you go. That's my take on Rush Limbaugh and what's going on there and what's going on with the people who are dancing the jig because he's dead now. And I say let him have that. But you know what? That comes back on you too. I do not think that there's any kind of goodness comes out of demeaning somebody because they died and you didn't like their politics. Somebody just said on one of my posts here, the post that I read, the greatest testament to a man's life is the celebration of his death by the worst people on the internet. Somebody that I respect a lot. I disagree with him politically many times, ideologically, but he always uses common sense and he's never demeaning when he does it. He says, I hear his show from time to time since the 1980s. Rush has spewed a good deal of hate himself during that time. But to somehow stomp on a man's grave and delight is just plain wrong. He was extremely influential and had a large and devoted listenership during his career. So while I, as a liberal Democrat, do not severely mourn his passing, for all those who liked the man, I say I'm sorry for your loss. Now that I think is about as good as you can get from somebody who disagreed with him ideologically. And so there it is. Let's leave it at that, folks, or I'll kick the dead horse. Elder Barry, good to see you. And I think you were in earlier, but I wasn't sure. So it's okay to mock dead commies, says Iowa X, since they're not human beings. Well, there you go. And isn't that it? You need to dehumanize somebody in order to demonize them. And that's what I have found. And that's why there's so much dehumanization that's going on. And right now, the left is in a mode of trying to. A little quieter, Pete, please, just a little. And so sometimes Pete's over there swearing at his fellow game players. So, and that's okay. We say the F bomb around here. It's all right. We say it on the radio here sometimes. So I just think he gets on the headset. He doesn't realize he's talking louder when he gets excited for shooting the enemy down. So, oh, and remember, he's like 92% dark triad, so he doesn't care. All right. One of these days, we're going to have Pete chime in with me on the radio show here. We're going to get some software set up so we can. I've been saying that for months, but now that I'm here, it's the perfect time to get that software engaged so we can get guests in here in dual window. We'll have Pete on, and he's got some good stuff to share. And we'll have Ruben Fast Horse on and some other people. So hopefully, if all goes well, maybe this week we'll be able to even start accomplishing some of that. So yeah, Steph, oh my virgin ears. Oh, I'm shocked that there's the F-bomb being thrown around in the background. So Doug says, Pete, he told you to shut up, take his paycheck away or put him outside. There it is. And so let's move on because I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I thought were very interesting about this whole dark triad thing. That there's some other things to it because we looked at kind of the negative side about it. But is there a positive side? There's the anti-hero. There's something about the anti-hero in this. It's all wrapped up in this. And there's also something about sexuality that's all wrapped up. And now there's a lot of material here, and we might have to spill this over into Friday's show to finish it. But the first thing I want to say about this is, are you confused about successful jerks or people that you look at? Wow, that guy's a jerk, but he's successful. Well, you got to get to know the dark triad. And we need to have this little primer, I think, on the traits that most people reject, but some people embrace. Imagine two types of people. Type one is selfish, dishonest, hostile, cold hearted. Type two is generous, honest, friendly, and warm. Which do you think you would like better if I were to ask you that? Which one would you pick to be your boss, your friend, your partner? Which type would you want your child to be and to befriend? Which type would you want to see succeed out of those two types of people? And my guess is that most people would choose type two. And there's the paradox. If most people prefer type two, why do we see so many successful, well connected, powerful people who are decidedly type ones? So, the way to understand this paradox is through the concept of the dark triad. And the dark triad, as we've mentioned over the last couple of days, is that term that's used in psychology to describe three aversive yet functional subclinical personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So, narcissism consists of dominance, motivation, a sense of entitlement, this perceived superiority combined with intolerance to criticism. Machiavellianism includes facile social charm, deceitful behavior aimed at undermining other people, and a reliance on manipulation. And psychopathy shows itself in this low, almost absent of empathy, high impulsivity, heartless social attitudes, interpersonal hostility. And so, taken together, the most powerful tendency underlying all of these three dark triad traits, is a knack for exploiting others. And there's more to say on this. There's an evolutionary perspective I want to look at, and maybe some of that we'll cover tomorrow night. There's bright minds that also have these dark hearts. There's intelligence in the dark triad. And Machiavellians may be the most intelligent of the dark personalities in humanity, in pop culture. Evil geniuses. They're the characters that are someone who combines brilliance with malevolence. They have had recurring popularity. There's even a widespread misconception that psychopaths are more intelligent than the average person. And on the other hand, a recent study suggests that Machiavellianism, a cynical and manipulative approach to interpersonal relations, actually might be associated with high intelligence. Let's see. Psychopathy, 85%. There you go. Pete's more intelligent because he's psychopathic. But he might just be Machiavellian. It's a cynical and manipulative approach to interpersonal relationships. You can be both. You can have all three in the dark triad. So, Pete, pat yourself on the back. You got all three. So, there you go. This might also help explain all these fundamental differences between psychopathy and Machiavellianism. Now, there's been a lot of research has gone into the dark triad, a trio of malevolent personality traits that consist of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. And although these three traits share a common core of interpersonal antagonism, they're antagonistic, they are supposed to each have this distinctive feature that sets them apart from each other. Narcissism, generally accepted to stand out from the other two, as it contains a mix of adaptive and maladaptive features. And it's been considered the lightest member of the triad is narcissism. And there's been considerable controversy about whether Machiavellianism is actually distinct from psychopathy. So specifically, psychopathy or psychopathology, if you will, is somebody who's psycho, in other words, combines callous disregard for others with reckless impulsivity, a lack of self-control, a deficient ability to adhere to long-term plans. And so in theory, Machiavellianism is also characterized by callousness, and it should be associated with the ability to delay gratification and focus on long-term planning. And for this reason, it's been argued that Machiavellianism, unlike psychopathy, should not be associated with impulsivity or low conscientiousness, which is a trait associated with self-control and deliberation before taking action. So something I want to do here, I want to give you, some of you may be familiar with Machiavellianism. I'm trying to spell it. Pardon me for trying to type on my shaking keyboard. Machiavelli quotes. Okay, I want you to hear some of the things that this guy had to say. Remember, I mentioned the other day that many of you may know who it is, who Machiavelli was. But why name a dark personality trait after Machiavelli? And so let's take a look at that. And Machiavelli quotes. There are, of course, really short ones and really long ones. Machiavelli said things like this. Niccolo Machiavelli, by the way. He wrote The Prince in 1513, was the year he wrote that. And he's often been called the father of modern political philosophy and political science. But he said this: it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. He said, hatred is gained as much by good works as by evil. Ain't that the truth? Just look at Rush Limbaugh. Hatred is gained by good works as much as by evil works. A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise. There you go. Of mankind, we may say in general, they're fickle, hypocritical, and greedy of gain. That's pretty true. One change always leaves the way open for the establishment of others. There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others. He also said princes and governments are far more dangerous than other elements within society. He said men shrink less from offending one who inspires love than one who inspires fear. Benefits should be conferred gradually, and in that way they'll taste better. And he who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. And those were some of his quotes, and there were some. There's some much bigger quotes, and some of them I've quoted him. Let's see. I would like to find one specifically, one quote of his specifically that I really enjoyed. Oh, he said, "It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret, than to not act and regret." Let's see. A government which does not trust its citizens to be armed is not itself to be trusted. How about that? Nowadays, with all the talk of gun control, all the talk of President Biden going to maybe be signing executive orders to enhance gun control. What do you think of that last quote? Machiavelli, 500 years ago. A government which does not trust its citizens to be armed is not itself to be trusted. He said the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. He said politics have no relation to morals. There's actually another quote um, that I'm looking for. This is not it, but it's a good one. He said, one of the great secrets of the day is to know how to take possession of popular prejudices and passions in such a way as to introduce a confusion of principles, which makes impossible all understanding between those who speak the same language and have the same interests. Let's see. I'm going to look and see. He said, women, is for you, ladies. Women are the most charitable creatures and the most troublesome. He who shuns women passes up the trouble, but also the benefits. He who puts up with them gains the benefits, but also the trouble. As the saying goes, there's no honey without bees. I desire to go to hell and not to heaven. In the former, I shall enjoy the company of popes, kings, and princes, while in the latter are only beggars, monks, and apostles. How about that? Now, I'm looking for one in particular. I'm going to see if it's in here, and I don't see it right off the bat. So I will paraphrase it in the way I understood it to mean. One of his quotes that I've liked the most. He said something about um, he who ushers in a new order to things will find what is it? He will find superficial friends. I'm paraphrasing it now. Superficial friends in those who wish to gain status under the new order, and erudite enemies by those who supported the old. And that's very true. Roger says it stings, but I kind of like it. Oh, that hurts, baby, but I like it. Johan, I wish I had the patience to keep bees. Johan must be in here. How you doing, Johan? Good to see you. and glad to have you here. Americans are so fat we could hold out for years, said IOX. So all of this talk of Machiavellianism, because they're talking about Machiavellianism as being kind of this bright, and there's more to this, and we'll cover more of this tomorrow. We only got 5 minutes left tonight, unless we choose to run over a little bit, which we could do. But I wanted to talk, at least touch on, and maybe finish up the topic that we advertised as kind of the title for tonight's show. When you look at Machiavellianism, you look at psychopathy, you look at narcissism, there is this, I don't know if you call it an upside, but it's the good and bad effects of so-called dark traits on sexuality, sexual well-being, as bolstered in a sense by the dark triad. In personality psychology, there's been great interest in understanding the so-called dark triad. It's these socially aversive traits that include, as we already mentioned, psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism. And one theory is that the dark triad are traits that facilitate short-term mating. Mating. Not, "Hi, matey," but mating. And casual sex encounters without a long-term commitment. Little is known about how these traits are related to the quality of a person's sexual functioning. Let's take a look at it for a second here. This is kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. A recent study, and I want to spend more time on this in 5 minutes, so we'll run over a little bit, but we'll tackle this again tomorrow. There was a recent study that found while these traits are generally associated with having more sexual partners, psychopathic and Machiavellian traits are also associated with poorer outcomes, such as sexual fear and anxiety. While narcissism and the trait of boldness seem to be associated with more adaptive outcomes. They're including higher sexual self-esteem and assertiveness. So while there's these various so-called dark traits that might facilitate short-term mating, they might do so for different reasons. This is the casual affair I'm talking about. Furthermore, these traits comprise a mix of psychologically healthy and unhealthy characteristics that comprise a mix of that can be positively or negatively affecting a person's sexual function. And so it might not be a common core of darkness that facilitates short term sexual encounters, but two distinct factors with divergent outcomes. And the concept of the dark triad of personality was introduced to highlight common features of three different concepts related to selfish and antisocial behaviors and attitudes. And psychopathy refers to callous disregard for the rights of others. And it's considered the most malevolent and therefore the darkest of the triad. Machiavellianism is a cynical and manipulative approach to social interaction. It's the next most dark, sometimes considered a milder variant of psychopathy. And narcissism refers to this grandiose sense of one's own superiority and feelings of entitlement to special treatment. On the other hand, and it's considered the lightest of all these three traits in this dark triad, as narcissists are often superficially attractive to others, at least initially, and they have very high self-esteem, very proud of themselves. They know who they are. They know where they're going. They know what they're doing. They know how they're going to achieve that and get there. And so that's what makes up this possible sexual positivity, if you will, of the dark triad, by looking at these things that create problems in them. Now, although previous research has found that people with dark traits tend to have more lifetime sexual partners, a higher number of them, the quality of their sexual experience, such as sexual satisfaction, Sexual self-esteem has been overlooked. So a recent study explored this. It's done by Pilchins and Smolars in 2019. And specifically, it examined how a number of dark traits in this dark triad were related to aspects of sexual self-concept, such as preoccupation with sex, sexual motivation, self-esteem, assertiveness, sexual fear and anxiety, and so on. That all of those were related to this dark triad. And so in this study, narcissism, Machiavellianism were each assessed as single traits. And on the other hand, psychopathy was assessed in terms of three traits based on the triarchic model that assumes that psychopathy consists of three components of meanness, interpersonal antagonism, in other words. This disinhibition, it's recklessly impulsive, and boldness, or the social confidence and poise. But it's important to note that the validity of the triarchic model as a representation of psychopathy has been criticized. And while meanness and disinhibition are generally accepted as these core features of psychopathy, boldness has been found to be a marker of good mental health, but it's one of the traits. And it has little or no connection to antisocial behavior, being bold. And that's typically associated with psychopathy. So hence boldness might not even be a dark trait at all. So in the study's results, the general pattern was narcissism, boldness, and disinhibition, being uninhibited, were related to most of the sexual variables in some way in both men and women, while Machiavellianism was related to most of them in women, but not in men. And meanness was largely unrelated to sexual variables in either sex, apart from two specific correlations. So, more specifically, the number of lifetime sexual partners. I could have probably led up to this a little better, and we've kind of jumped into it. I could have throughout the show, I meant led up to the sexual stuff, maybe been a little more lighthearted with it to get here. But the idea here is the number of sexual lifetime partners, the number that you have throughout your life, and sexual motivation were both positively related to narcissism and boldness and disinhibition in both men and women. How can you have multiple sexual partners and not be bold and not have have inhibitions, not be narcissistic in some way? So sexual preoccupation was also positively related to narcissism and to disinhibition in both men and women, and to boldness and Machiavellianism in women only, and to meanness in men only. So unexpectedly, meanness in women only was related to lower sexual motivation. You've seen a mean bitch, she probably is not highly sexually motivated. And what I mean by that is moved by being sexual. Johan said, I'm so busy turning tables over, I forgot all about sex. There you go. Steph says, I was going with sexual healing. Oh, yeah, there's another song. You're so musical tonight, Steph. And so, going on in this, specifically, higher sexual self-esteem, sexual self-awareness, sexual assertiveness. These are associated with boldness and narcissism, but not the other traits. And Machiavellianism and disinhibition were related to lower sexual assertiveness. So additionally, higher sexual satisfaction in both men and women was related to boldness only, while Machiavellianism was related to lower sexual satisfaction in both men and women. So going even further with that, sexual anxiety, you know what that is? You ever have sexual anxiety? Call it performance anxiety, anything like that. You ever been that way? I once, I'm just going to tell a personal story. It's not dirty, but I once was asked wistfully to join a young woman in bed. And I was a young man at the time. I think it was like 27 or 28. And she had two children who were in the home. And we thought we were being quiet. And those children woke up. They're laughing and giggling. And then asking me if I was going to be their new dad and things like that. And that's what it led to. And you know what that did for me? Did not make me erect, Pete. Pete was made you erect. Thanks for Pete's input over there. No, it did the exact opposite. When I heard kids giggling in the other room, giggity giggity, I was out. I couldn't. I said I gotta go. I can't do this. And I hate to say that. Now that's what 32, 33 years ago. But that was good on you. Oh, I thought somebody said good on you, Pete. That was for Doug. So, yeah, don't encourage Pete. He'll go on and on. Doug says, my wife is a nymph, so even if I don't want to get it, yeah, when I perform for myself, says Johan. So good on you, Doug, was the, so Teresa's laughing. And I'm just not going here, says Teresa. Were they holding up cards with numbers on 9-4, 7-2? You didn't perform very well. And so that is one of the traits, by the way. This sexual anxiety, sexual fear tend to be related to higher levels of Machiavellianism and disinhibition, and to lower levels of boldness and narcissism. If you're bold, you're not going to let. If you're a narcissist, you don't care what those kids think. You find a way to manipulate them to go to sleep, and then you go have your shag session with the mom. So because there's boldness, there's no inhibition there. Now, since the dark traits have this considerable overlap, the authors of this study performed an analysis that controlled for the shared variance of the traits to determine which were unique predicators of the outcomes, predictors of the outcomes. And they found that boldness was positively associated, and that Machiavellianism was negatively associated with sexual satisfaction. So if you're Machiavellian in your personality type, that's going to lead to less sexual satisfaction. And sexual motivation was positively associated with narcissism and disinhibition, and negatively with the meanness. So the patterns and the result of all this sexual testing seem to suggest that several of the so-called dark traits tend to facilitate short-term mating. In other words, casual sex traits, as most of them, with the notable exception of meanness. And that was associated with higher sexual motivation and having more sexual partners. So, in other words, if you are higher on the Machiavellian scale or the narcissism scale, you're gonna have a lot more casual sex than the next person, generally speaking. That casual sex will be easier for you to engage in. But it might not be the common core of darkness that explains this. One explanation of the dark triad is that they share a common core of this interpersonal antagonism. And this antagonism, selfish motivation to get ahead, to put one's interests ahead of other people, to put one's interests ahead of a willingness to use aggression to get ahead. And in terms of the well-known Big Five model of personality traits, we talked about that the other night, the three members of the dark triad have a common core of low agreeableness, a trait related to the quality of one's interpersonal relationships. So additionally, psychopathy, Machiavellianism are similar in being typically associated with low conscientiousness. I mean, you don't care about what the other people think. You're out for yourself. It's a trait related to self-discipline, which indicates that they're each related to reckless recklessness, and impulsivity. On the other hand, narcissism differs from the others in that it's also associated with high extroversion, which is related to their social confidence and their assertiveness. And there's some disagreement about the components of psychopathy. And we noted that a bit earlier. And so it's all of this, hence meanness, disinhibition, capture the antagonistic and impulsive aspects of psychopathy, while boldness is thought to capture an element of fearlessness. And you can see how those things might play into how you treat somebody sexually. And and we could go on with this, but I think we're already running about 10 minutes over time. So I'm gonna pick some of this up tomorrow and talk a little bit about a little more about these things. I want to tie some of these knots together. Who spit their coffee? That's what he said. What did he say? My daughter said to, so when you were born, you thought you were the center of the universe? I said, yes. Doesn't everyone? Let's see. I think it's relating to something Doug said, maybe. I don't know. That's what he said. Coffee spit, says Teresa. So, folks, what do you think of all that? What do you think of where you stand on? And this is not a way to get anybody to confess their sexual exploits or anything like that. It's a way to examine yourself and take a look at self and say, how have I treated my sexuality? How have I treated other people? If you took that test and you find you're higher in the dark triad than other people, how has that affected you sexually? So, in other words, the stuff we talked about just a little earlier tonight, and then the sexuality part, what you're starting to see is there might be some good that comes with the dark triad. That good meaning it allows assertiveness, it allows boldness, it allows somebody to step out and take risks. While there are also other negative uh, aspects of that, and that's the callousness, the uncaring, the lack of conscientiousness, the meanness. The boldness is really not a bad thing, as we found tonight. So there you go. That's what I've got for right now. Where are you at? Where are you at? And so I hate that phrase, and that's how it came out. And so my wife will always text me. We're in the store and we wander out. She goes, "Where are you at?" And I think I do that to her. Where you at? Where you be? Where you be at? I ask her. So Doug Stack says, great show. Audrey says, great show. So hopefully all of you, this clicked into something. Sex sells. Maybe even the talk of sex sells. So if you enjoyed this show, there's more we've got to say about this tomorrow. We're going to hit up on this and kind of conclude this topic by the end of the week here, which is tomorrow. And need I remind you that when it was really cold down here in Lake Charles, Louisiana, tomorrow, and I hate to say this for those of you in the Great White North, tomorrow it's going to be 46 degrees and sunny here tomorrow. On its way up to 60 by Sunday, on its way up to 70 by the middle to the end of next week. So it's starting to get nicer. We're starting to pull out of this cold spell, and I'm happy about that. I'm going to be happy about just the sun shining tomorrow and being able to be out in 46 degrees. My son and I were walking some of the neighborhoods, visiting people's houses, and the other day, and it was like 35 and sunny, and it was fantastic. So, what did Steph just say? Sex sells. Who buying? Take my money, as they say. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the show, folks. We got more of this tomorrow. And again, more good things coming. And so you all sit tight. We're going to take a 23 and 3/4 hour break. And so you sit tight and we'll be right back with the new show tomorrow. So you guys have a good night. Thank you for being here. If you are not a member of this channel, hit the join button. It's going to cost you a little money, $2, $5, $15. You can see what the perks are. Join, become a member, and you can take that sunshine and shove it, says Roger Rabbit. Shove it this way, please. I'll do my best. Yes, and Teresa said it best. Thanks for the laughs, family. Thanks for the good time. And thank everybody here. You're welcome, Johan. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you're here. Everybody that's here, if I missed you coming in and I didn't say hello, thanks for being here. And so all of you have a good night. And as I started to say, live long and prosper. We'll see you tomorrow.